Welcome. My name is Marcus Wiaw, and I will be your facilitator for this Hazard Communication and Global Harmonization System presentation on Appendix A Health Hazard Classifications. This is the second part of a two-part series, and again, this presentation will survey the 10 health hazard classifications under the Hazard Communication GHS system, their meanings, and how they fit into hazard communication. If you have any questions or comments, my contact information is listed on the screen. As with the first part of this two-part series, again, the primary objective we aim to cover with this video presentation pertains to the 10 health hazard classifications. Once more, the last bullet point listed on your screen describes the 3 hazard classifications within the Hazard Communication GHS standards. We will be addressing the health hazard classifications in this module, and the idea is to cover the material in more depth to provide a greater understanding of hazard communication GHS. In the first part of this presentation, we left off with germ cell mutagenicity, and we aim to continue the second part of this video presentation with carcinogens. Carcinogen means a substance or a mixture of substances which induce cancer or increase its incidence. Substances and mixtures that have induced benign and malignant tumors in well-performed experimental studies on animals are considered also to be presumed or suspected human carcinogens unless there is strong evidence that the mechanism of tumor formation is not relevant for humans. Classification of a substance or mixture as posing a carcinogenic hazard is based on its inherent properties and does not provide information on the level of the human cancer risk which the use of the substance or mixture may represent. Similarly, carcinogens are broken up into 2 categories, Category 1 and Category 2. Category 1 is further separated into Category 1A and 1B. If you can turn your attention to the chart listed on the screen, Category 1 carcinogens are predominantly known or presumed to cause cancer. Category 1A carcinogens are known to have carcinogenic potential for human beings based on a great deal of scientific evidence. Category 1B carcinogens are presumed to have some type of carcinogenic potential to human beings based upon laboratory experiments involving animal test studies. It is important to note here that although animal studies may suggest a chemical is carcinogenic, this does not always translate to a definitive answer on whether or not a chemical can or does cause cancer in human beings. Category 2 carcinogens are simply suspect. This means that Category 2 carcinogens may or may not cause cancer, but rather there's enough reason to believe that these chemicals have the potential to cause cancer within human beings. When we discuss carcinogens in terms of how we view these types of chemicals, it is best to adopt the philosophy that we never know for absolute certain the causative factors pertaining to complex illnesses such as cancer. It is best to consider chemicals with a Category 1 or Category 2 carcinogen rating dangerous altogether, in which case all employees need to take the maximum level of precaution. Reproductive toxicity includes adverse effects on sexual function and fertility in adult males and females, as well as adverse effects on development of the offspring. Some reproductive toxic effects cannot be clearly assigned to either impairment of sexual function and fertility or to developmental toxicity. Nonetheless, chemicals with these effects shall be classified as reproductive toxicants. Adverse effects on sexual function and fertility means any effect of chemicals that interferes with reproductive ability or sexual capacity. This includes, but is not limited to, alterations to the female and male reproductive system, adverse effects on onset of puberty, gamete production and transport, reproductive cycle normality, sexual behavior, fertility, pregnancy outcomes, premature reproductive senescence, or modifications in other functions that are dependent on the integrity of the reproductive systems. Adverse effects on development of the offspring means any effect of chemicals which interferes with normal development of the conceptus either before or after birth, which is induced during pregnancy or results from parental exposure. These effects can be manifested at any point in the lifespan of the organism. The major manifestations of developmental toxicity include death of the developing organism, structural abnormality, altered growth, and functional deficiency. Please note that often reproductive toxicity will be referred to as teratogenicity, and reproductive toxicants can be called teratogens. Reproductive toxicity is broken up into two categories, where Category 1 is further separated into Category 1A and Category 1B. Category 1 describes chemicals that are known or presumed to have human reproductive toxicity factors. Category 1A chemicals are known human reproductive toxicants, and Category 1B are presumed human reproductive toxicants. Category 2 are suspect human reproductive toxicants. Specific target organ toxicity single exposure, or STOT-C, means specific non-lethal target organ toxicity arising from a single exposure to a chemical. All significant health effects that can impair function, both reversible and irreversible, immediate and or delayed, and not specifically relevant with respect to single exposures are included. Specific target organ toxicity following repeated exposure is classified in accordance with specific target organ toxicity repeated exposure and isn't included here until the next slide. The chart is shown on your screen, and it outlines the three hazard categories pertaining to specific target organ toxicity single exposure. Category 1 describes chemical substances that have produced significant toxicity in humans, or that, on the basis of evidence from studies in experimental animals, can be presumed to have the potential to produce significant toxicity in humans following a single exposure. Category 2 chemicals are substances that, on the basis of evidence from studies in experimental animals, can be presumed to have the potential to be harmful to human health following a single exposure. Finally, Category 3 chemical substances are described as causing transient target organ effects. More to the point, Category 3 substances are best described as effects that adversely alter human function for a short duration after exposure, and from which humans may recover in a reasonable time frame without leaving significant alteration of structure or function. For example, Category 3 would include chemical substances that lead to narcotic effects and respiratory tract irritation. Specific target organ toxicity repeated exposure, or STOT-RE, means specific target organ toxicity arising from repeated exposure to a substance or mixture. All significant health effects that can impair function, both reversible and irreversible, immediate and or delayed, and not specifically otherwise addressed, are included. Specific target organ toxicity repeated exposure has two hazard categories, Category 1 and Category 2. Category 1 pertains to chemical substances that have produced significant toxicity in humans, or that, on the basis of evidence from studies in experimental animals, can be presumed to have the potential to produce significant toxicity in humans following repeated or prolonged exposure. Category 2 pertains to chemical substances that, on the basis of evidence from studies in experimental animals, can be presumed to have the potential to be harmful to human health following repeated or prolonged exposure. Aspiration means the entry of a liquid or solid chemical directly through the oral or nasal cavity or indirectly from vomiting into the trachea and lower respiratory system. Aspiration toxicity includes severe acute effects such as chemical pneumonia, varying degrees of pulmonary injury, or death following aspiration. Aspiration is initiated at the moment of inspiration in the time required to take one breath as the causative material lodges at the crossroad of the upper respiratory and digestive tracts in the laryngopharyngeal region. Aspiration of a substance or mixture can occur as it is vomited following ingestion. This may have consequences for labeling, particularly where, due to acute toxicity, a recommendation may be considered to induce vomiting after ingestion. However, if the substance or mixture also presents an aspiration toxicity hazard, the recommendation to induce vomiting may need to be modified. There is only a single hazard category for aspiration hazards. Category 1 describes chemicals known to cause human aspiration toxicity hazards or to be regarded as if they cause human aspiration toxicity hazards. This concludes the second part of the Hazard Communication GHS video presentation on health hazards. Feel at liberty to contact me with your questions, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation and have a great day.